Recording in progress.
Well, good evening. It is now 5 p.m. and we're calling a special... Good evening. It is now 5 p.m. and we're calling the special meeting of the City Council together on June 20th, 2023, and the mayor apologizes. He is out of town with his wife for her birthday. And Susan Honda is excused because she is at a conference in Spokane on behalf of the city. So we'll call the meeting to order. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. So the first item on the agenda is a study session on surface water utility capital improvement plan. E.J. Walsh, who is our Public Works Director. E.J.?
Good evening. Let me get this started and see if I can share here. So good evening, members of council. Tonight we are here to do a update on the Surface Water Management Comprehensive Plan and the Capital Improvement Plan update. So this is a requirement where under our NPDES permit, which is a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, required to do every 2 years. So we are getting that permit requirement met tonight. With that, some background information, for at least just for the public's knowledge. I think council's probably fairly familiar with this. So in 2017, we as a city went through a update to the comprehensive plan as well as the capital improvement plan for the surface water utility. As part of doing that, we went through a series of public meetings. We had open houses at the libraries throughout the city, the community center, various different events. We did some here. We went to various HOA meetings. We did community outreach surveys as well as targeted outreach to groups like Puget Sound Keepers and to other targeted environmentalist groups within the city. There were discussions with the mayor and council on the priorities related to it. There was input from Public Works, Traffic, Development Services, Community Development Planning was involved with this, as was Code Enforcement and the Parks Department. The bulk of the work revolved around reviewing the past projects and identifying needed projects within the city over the course of the next study period. So in 2019, that work was wrapped up and the comprehensive plan for the surface water utility was adopted. So that is in place through 2027. So we are at the point now that we are executing on the council adopted priorities of that. So the overall purpose of the surface water comprehensive plan is effectively 3 separate targets. The first is to meet the federal requirements, which we're required to do as a city. The second is to meet the surface water related needs of the city. So this has to deal with flooding, with conservation of wetlands, and kind of that category. And then the third is to design and construct identified projects to implement the wills, desires, and needs of the city. So what does that look like in practice? So this is one of the projects that we did in 2018, I believe this was constructed, to mitigate flooding. This is 376th on the east side of Pack Highway. So this was a historic area that overtopped pretty much every spring and fall. We went in and upsized culverts through here to eliminate this flooding concern that you see. And in the yellow jacket, I'm pretty sure everyone on council remembers Marwan. That's him standing in the middle of the water there. So the NPDES permit, this is where it proverbially speaking, the rubber meets the road of how the federal government can mandate this. So the federal government is in charge at the bottom of the stream, or at the bottom of the stream, but also the bottom of the screen of the water body. So all of the city drains to regulated waterways. That is, the Puget Sound is obviously the big one we all think of, but we also have, we drain into several navigable waterways, most specifically the Hylobos Creek, which drains down into the Port of Tacoma. So they regulate all of those. In turn, they regulate what we are allowed to send to those bodies of water, which is the outfalls that you see, kind of the next level up. And that's where the city's NPDES permit is really monitored by the federal government. So above that line, everything that you see becomes the city's responsibilities through our NPDES permit to enforce, to construct, to build, to treat, to maintain, to get to the point that any water that's reaching those outfalls meets the federal thresholds. So that covers everything from runoff on private residential houses to commercials. This is where, as a city, we get the enforcement authority for things like pet waste and excessive fertilizer, as well as things like diesel fuel spills on highways, to illegal dumping in the wetlands. All of that is based around this concept that we are ultimately responsible as a city for what drains to the waterway because it leaves our outfalls. So kind of at that level where you see that's the stop sign, that's where the buck stops with the city, so to speak, and where we get our phase 2 permit requirements. And then that drives most on the regulatory side what we have to do as a city. We also have several lake management districts. The one with Steel Lake Management District specifically is in the middle of reforming for the 3rd time. These are a great partnership between community residents and the city to monitor and maintain lakes within the city. We have 3 of them active right now. So that is another area where we have targeted outreach. That ties in also through the Federal Clean Water Act. And then tangent to that, we're also responsible to protect and improve water quality. That's an analytical exercise that we are required to do based on permit requirements. And then the next major threshold is conservation properties. So we as a city maintain a significant acreage in wetlands conservation and stream buffer, specifically in the south end of the city. And again, that is targeted to our outreach program as well as our stewardship of the watershed. And it's a way that, as a city, we have chosen some time ago in the late 90s to manage our watershed. And what it allows us to do is it allows denser development around the city core in the northern part of the city, more or less at a very high level in exchange for preserving the wetlands and the stream corridors in the southern end of the city. So those properties that we've acquired are perpetually protected. We have secured, whether it is deed restrictions or through the grant application process, those properties that we've secured are prohibited from further or future development. So this focused on the south end, basically from 348th would be right on the north end of this map. This is kind of the area that we are focused on. This was council direction approximately 10 years ago. So the area that is kind of that light green color is the areas that we have preserved. You can see there's a couple missing links. Ultimately, what you'll see in a minute is this becomes one of the next major surface water projects to build a trail system through this entire corridor that I think all of the council members has been involved with at some point in the development of that project. So I'm sure you are all familiar with. Of this, we actually received Conservation Future Trust, or CFT funding, to preserve the 2 parcels right here on the east side of Pack Highway, as well as the parcel that the fire department owns adjacent to the Blueberry Farm. So that is 2 of the 3 missing links to this project. We are supposed to have all 3 of those properties acquired by the end of this year. And that's already been through the council process. We are in the middle of negotiating with those property owners. So the projects that were identified looks like this, and there's a better picture of this in a minute that's a little bit more legible. But these are all the projects that we as a city agreed to advance, I'll say, between 20 and 2027. So there is both capacity projects related to flood reduction as well as water quality projects, and then the light blue ones are educational component projects, so that they tie both watershed stewardship as well as tying into trail projects with educational signage and preservation of the wetlands. And, kind of one of the leading national drives associated with that project is a good way to preserve wetlands and open space in this arena is to use good people to go through the areas. And essentially, if you can have a trail system that is used by the general public in a positive manner, you keep unwanted activities out of there, be that encampments, be that illegal foresting within the wetlands, be it dumping, be it everything that goes on that list. The more positive activation you get, the better off you are. So we take that list, and what we do is we turn it into a city budget, and as part of the budget process, we go through this, and you can see that, and at the top it has the tables of what's funded, and then the next slide is a blow-up of that same table on the bottom. We have adopted the 23-24 as part of that budget process, and then the planned, so we have to work on a 7-year horizon under state law for the utility, but as a city, we only adopt a 2-year budget. So this is how we address that, in that, as a city, we can't adopt or encumber things that are outside the budget realm, but to meet with the state requirements, we do have to have a 7-year cycle. So we have the out years are in the planned category, which shows that the city is, in some cases, actively working on these projects in the design phase, but construction occurs in a future budget horizon. So as we go through, all of the ones that are turning yellow on the screen in front of you are projects that are already underway. They are projects we're actively working on design. The ones that kind of got skipped in the middle are high priority, but the way that the budget funding worked within the overall CIP, they had to get pushed out to kind of make the numbers work, and there was a rating exercise of how we make all this work within the funding and how we have the minimal impact on the ratepayers. So those 3 projects got pushed further into the budget cycle, as you can see by them being funded out in 2027. The red ones are projects we are supposed to be actively working on that we have not actually started yet. So 2 of the 3 of them are consultant projects, and it's just timing. We have contracts in place, and they will be started this year, but it's just not yet within the budget. The third one, the neighborhood drainage program, we got that off the ground last year and are kind of working on revamping it a little bit to be more neighborhood friendly based on some of the feedback we got. So that will be coming back to council probably early 2024 to kind of restructure that program a little bit to be more easily implemented within the neighborhoods. So what else does the surface water utility do? So we've covered a lot of the big ticket items. That being said, that is the small portion of the work. So the rest of, and this is far from an inclusive list, but kind of the big categories of what the surface water utility does is, we have a maintenance staff associated with SWIM that is responsible for maintaining everything existing. So this involves everything from going out and making sure catch basins are clear in the fall before it rains, to dealing with landslides on city property, to mowing ponds, to clearing stormwater pipes that clog, to abating flooding. We also have, and all of these, to be very clear, are required under our NPDES permit. None of these hit the optional column. But the next one is inspection. So we have to inspect every business property that has the ability to pollute stormwater every other year. So we have staff that is their full-time job, that, with the number of businesses that we have in the city, it's a full-time job to get all of them done in 2 years. We also, as part of that, are responsible for inspecting every private surface water infrastructure on an annual basis. So the same staff does all of that. We have an entire water quality monitoring and reporting team. So we have one staff member that does this, and then we leverage a volunteer group that also goes out and does stream water quality network analysis for us, and goes out and actually pulls pH samples and water temperature samples and dissolved oxygen and a couple other parameters. We also handle illicit discharge detection. We do this typically in conjunction with code enforcement and our police department. So this is everything from, hey, the truck driving down the street was leaking diesel fuel or hydraulic fluid, and it was a complete accident, and it's just a matter of, hey, we need to protect the environment, up through illicit intentional dumping. We had one very recently that was a paint manufacturer that was going out and intentionally dumping it down the storm sewer so they didn't have to pay to dispose of the used paint. So we have everything and anything in between. So education and outreach, Storming the Sound, another event I'm sure council is very familiar with, is kind of the large event, but we do on average about 40 outreach events a year. So we're busy in that arena as well. That's kind of the nutshell version of it. The last piece I want to touch on is, so we started in 2020 developing, this was kind of based on feedback from the community, the capital projects guide that was on each of your things, and Brian, I owe you one when we get done here in a second. That we started this, I think, 3 years ago now, and we've been updating it every 2 years and again, this was based on feedback from the community that we were getting a lot of questions of, hey, you guys put all these Excel sheets in the budget document with all sorts of numbers, and we have no idea what these projects mean, and there's no comprehensive way to figure out what the city is doing. And hey, Public Works, you spend a lot of money building stuff, and the community legitimately wanted to have more information about what we were doing and the projects that were being planned. So this was kind of the answer to that. So we've gone through and updated that. We've taken the projects that have been completed since the last time we did this out, as well as added the projects that council has approved adding for not just the surface water utility, but also for streets and pedestrian and the traffic groups. So this is inclusive of all public capital improvement projects that are handled through our department. There is a talk eventually in the future of making this citywide and incorporating the parks CIP into this, but we haven't done that. This is just Public Works. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation, EJ. Council, are there any questions? I see that Councilmember Sevadasan has some.
Sorry about that. I have a couple of questions. One is with the your very last slide about the water, monitoring the water quality. Does the water district partner with us, or can we partner with them to do this project for?
So they do partner with us, yes. We monitor different things. So they typically monitor the aquifer, and they have a monitoring network that monitors subsurface, and we have a monitoring network that monitors above, namely streams above surface. And we do share information, yes. And that's kind of been the link of, they kind of monitor what impacts their system, we monitor what impacts our system, and then we share the data. But they don't go out and monitor streams, and likewise, we don't go monitor the stormwater, or the groundwater recharge aquifers either. But yes, we absolutely collaborate with them.
Okay, so, but that's not needed for the CIP?
No.
What they do, okay. And then when you were talking about projects that could be priority, but we have to push them back towards 2027 and 28?
Correct.
What are we compromising, or how's that gonna impact us in the long run? Where should we prioritize them and push them back closer to?
So that was a fairly detailed analysis that was done by our consultant of what is the long-term cost of delaying some of those projects versus the cost to effectively to bond those projects to pull them forward. Most of them are water quality projects that got pushed out further into the cycle. As well as one component of a trail system that we're trying to get done. So they're not impacting anything that's going to impact flooding or impact necessarily direct quality of life. They certainly do have an environmental impact. I don't want to trivialize that. But it's always a little bit of a balancing act. We could add easily another 25, 30 projects to this list that would completely be justified. And if you remember back to the comp plan, we had, when this was adopted in 2019, we came to council with 3 different levels of service and levels of project, and it was kind of like an A tier, a B tier, and a C tier. The A tier was the most expensive, but also the most holistic to implement, and then C tier was the kind of most affordable option, with the trade-off that, a lot of the projects got pushed out and we didn't do as much. We met all of the permit requirements. I do want to be clear on that, but we were not going above with either the education outreach component and or some of the water quality stuff that will probably be part of future MPDS permits but are not part of today's permit. After a lot of discussion with council, we were directed to implement option C and to do it at the most cost affordable level for the ratepayers. So that's what you're seeing in the document, and that is somewhat reflected in the discussion and the question that you're asking as well.
Yeah, but also doubles the cost, right? We're going from roughly 3 million to now 6 million when you get further out. In today's dollars, right?
It increases the cost. I'm not sure if it doubles it off the top of my head, but yes, because they're separate projects and each project is priced individually.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if it doubles it, but yeah, certainly we are paying a premium to push it out.
I believe Councilmember Wash is next.
Just a quick question. You said there were 3 lake management districts. I know there's Steel Lake, North Lake. What's the third one?
You might be right. It might be 2 right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
I believe Killarney might have one.
Killarney definitely has one that we participate in, although it is in
Mostly,
it's in
90% of it is county rather than
it
this
is
little
but,
corner in the city.
but we actively participate in it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I have a couple.
Sure.
When you talked about the Conservation Futures Trust, is that a state program?
No, that's King County.
County. How do they fund that? Is it, because we have a tax, a stormwater tax.
So King County has a program that's part of the county tax assessment that goes towards conservation of property countywide. So so they collect a pool that's used to conserve property across the entire county, within unincorporated county as well as within cities. We apply for it. There is a geographic equity component to that scoring. So a portion of those properties has to be in cities. It can't all be unincorporated. So we were successful in getting some of the collected county funding to fund conservation of city properties, or properties within the city. Sorry, I said that incorrectly.
Well, that's great. And I just want to tell you how wonderful Storming the Sound is. I was with a group of students at Green River Community College, elementary students, when they were releasing the, what do you call them, the fry?
The fry, yeah.
Into the water. And it was, the kids were really excited. It was great for the kids.
It's a great program. We're lucky to have as strong of a program with that as we do.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, seeing no other, and since this is information only, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good job, EJ. All right, so our council now will recess to executive session to discuss evaluating qualifications of candidates for appointment to the elective office pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subset 1, subset H. And at the end of that discussion, we will adjourn. However, those people that we have agreed to select will be, or had suggested interviewing, will be announced at the regular council meeting. So stay tuned for that. And so we are now recessing into executive session at 5:24 p.m. Thank you.